Alright, our notes today are 5.3, solving rational equations. We've got a few steps. Step 1, just like in 5.2 when we're simplifying rational expressions, first step is find the least common denominator. Step 2, we're actually going to multiply both sides by the entire least common denominator. Step 3 is simplify. This is my favorite step because on this step all the denominators should disappear. And then we're left with a simple algebraic equation that we can solve. I'm going to do one example for you. So, example 1, we have p plus 3 over 5 p squared equals p minus 1 over 5p squared minus 1 over p. Step 1, least common denominator. So here we're literally just focusing on the denominators. And we can look at the coefficients. Find the least common multiple of 5, 5, and 1. 5, right? The least common multiple is 5. So then we look at the p's. So just focus on that. And the least common multiple between p squared, p, and p. Remember, you can't have anything smaller than the largest exponent. This is back kind of refresher from Unit 1. So p squared. Step 2, multiply both sides of the equation by the common denominator. So the sides are separated by the equal sign. So we're going to multiply this side by 5 p squared. We're going to multiply this side by 5 p squared. There's a couple ways you can think about doing this. This side's pretty easy. We're multiplying, it's right next to each other, and so we can go, oh, look at that. 5p squared and 5p squared should cancel out, right? We're just left with p plus 3. This side is a little trickier. It helps me a little bit to think about it as over 1, that common denominator. I have to distribute to both of these pieces. So I'm going to make my little thought bubble off to the side and do some work. So this is going to look like p minus 1 over 5p squared times 5p squared over 1. Oh, now you see it. The 5p squareds cancel out. I'm left with just p minus 1. Right? And that's what's going to go here, the p minus 1. Next, I'm going to do my little thought bubble for this one. So I have 1 over p times 5p squared over 1. So I look at the diagonal and go, oh, p squared and p, they have a p in common. So that just eliminates the squared here, and that p goes away. I'm left with just a 5p. So I gotta remember there's a minus sign here, so it's gonna be minus 5p. Ta-da! No more denominators. Now's the fun part. I can just simplify and solve. So we can combine like terms here. P minus 5p is negative 4p. And then minus 1. I'm going to gather all my p's on the same side, so add 4p to both sides. So I have 5p plus 3 equals negative 1. Subtract the 3. 5p equals negative 4. And divide by 5. So when we're solving rational equations, in the end, we should have a value for our variable. So p equals negative 4/5 is the final answer. All right, I'm going to do one more. It's actually straight off your worksheet. It's number 6 on your handout. I'm going to call it example 2. Feel free to do it on your notes or on your worksheet. On the worksheet, your assignment is only the odds, so this isn't really cutting into the practice. So 3n minus 18 over n squared plus 7n plus 6 minus 4n plus 16 over n squared plus 7n plus 6 equals 1 over n plus 1. To find the least common denominator, I went into more detail in 5.2. So you want to factor the denominators if you can factor them, and we can here. So what two numbers multiply to get 6 and add to get 7? Amanda?
6 and 1.
Excellent. So 6 and 1. So I'm going to factor this into n plus 6, n plus 1. Well, I could do the same thing here, right? It's the same thing. Can't factor this one. Now that they're factored, I find the least common denominator. Remember, you have to include each piece, so we go through and we go, okay, n plus 6, we need to include that. Need to include an n plus 1. Covered, check, check. Over here, n plus 1's already covered. Remember, we got the phantom parenthesis signs there. So now we can multiply both sides of the equation by our common denominator. Come back up here. Multiply this side by n plus 6, n plus 1. Multiply this side by n plus 6. Put that over 1. Now here's where it could be helpful. Well, you might be able to look at it and see. If we distribute here, right, think about this again as over 1. We can do our little thought bubble if you want to. So we have n plus 6, n plus 1 over 1 times 3n minus 18 over n plus 6, n plus 1. Oh, they cancel out. Boom. So in this case, right, for this first expression, it boils down to 3n minus 18. for the second expression, little thought bubble, I've got 4n plus 16 over n plus 6, n plus 1. I realize I wrote it out of order, but that's okay, it means the same thing, right? We have commutative property for multiplication, so no harm done. And again, when we write it out this way, it's a little more obvious to see that that these two cancel out. And we're only left with, don't forget the minus sign, the 4n plus 16. Now these are, again, right next to one another, so it's a little bit more obvious to see, okay, just the n plus 1 cancels. And we're left with just the n plus 6, right? Have this colorful equation. Now I just need to simplify and solve. Deep breath. So we distribute the minus sign. That's the most common mistake you're going to make, is forgetting to distribute a minus sign. So minus 4n, minus 16. Combine some like terms. 3n minus 4n is negative n. And then my negative 18 minus 16 is minus 34. I'm going to add n to both sides. Subtract 6 and divide by 2. So that is quite a process, right? We have those few steps. What's step 1? Somebody raise your hand. Okay. Find the LCD. Step 2. Amanda?
Multiply both sides of the LCD.
Multiply both sides by the LCD. Number 3. Okay.
Simplify, and then all denominators.
Simplify, and all the denominators disappear. 4. Back to Amanda.
Solve.
Solve. This is the solve. So you kind of got to take a deep breath, and you can get through it. The good news is you only have 6 problems to do on your own, and we have time to get started. So